Hello, I'm Sumner Crosby. I'm a member of the Lewis Beekeepers, and we thought we'd share how things work at our University of Delaware apiary, which is right in the corner by the university buildings here in Lewis. We've been keeping bees around Lewis for a few years now. We built this apiary last year, 2 years ago, and it started with 2 hives. We've now got, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hives. Each of these sets of boxes is a hive. The entire structure here, this fence that surrounds it, we would refer to as the apiary, the place where the beehives are kept. A couple points: we've got stone on the ground. We've got a landscape cloth underneath it to help prevent weed growth. Each time that we come to the apiary, we come with a set of specific objectives about what it is that we're looking for. We don't want to just get in the habit of breaking open hives and disturbing the bees, because there are a lot of bees inside this box and they don't need to be disturbed, and we frankly don't need to bother disturbing them unless we've got specific reasons to evaluate where things are with the hive. Usually when we come to inspect a hive, we want to make sure, probably the first and foremost thing is that we have a laying queen. We've got a queen who's doing her job and sustaining the population of bees in the hive. We want to evaluate the amount of room for her laying, to make sure that as she's laying eggs that there's room for the bees to grow and to build out the population of the hive. So we're going to break one of these open just to take a look. You notice, before I even get in, if you just pan around to these 3 hives right in front of us, this hive has a few bees, but not very many. It's been a few weeks since I've been here. I'm not really sure what the story is with this. Every day is different from every other day. The weather is really a factor. A couple things we can see on this number 5 hive here is we've got a number of bees that are sitting on what we call the landing board here. You can see the screen that's allowing a little air to come up from underneath, allow a little better air passage through the entire hive. But you'll see right here, that bee right there has pollen coming in on her legs, which indicates that we have some floral sources that are out there, and they're bringing pollen back hopefully to young babies that need to be fed. That's always a good sign to see that pollen. It means we've got pollen in the landscape that supports the bees, but it also means that there's a reason to have pollen coming into the hive, which usually means we've got a laying queen, which we might confirm in a minute. So I'm going to come over here and take a look at this one, and we can see the same thing here. They're our oldest hives. We've had to split this hive a couple of times because it's been such a nice producer. There are fewer bees on this hive today. But we can see bees coming, the little orange blobs of pollen coming into the nest, which suggests that we should find a laying queen and young larvae when we get into the hive. There are a lot of bees in here. We need to try to make them feel a little more at ease. So what we're doing is we're blowing smoke in here and around the top to maybe divert their attention from us. I'm going to open the top of the hive here. Just a simple box. And maybe you come take a look at this. There are a lot of bees in here. Okay, I'm going to put some smoke in here, and you can see that the bees will actually pull away. They're actually pulling back from where they were. The things that we're doing when we're in here is we're listening. We're using as many different senses as we can. Although my nose doesn't work as well as I'd like, there's the possibility that I might smell a foul odor when we first open the hive. That's always a good indication that we might have some sort of a problem that needs addressing. I don't smell anything bad. There should be just a general sort of a honey kind of a smell, very gentle, light honey smell. But I did notice when I opened this up that there were a fair number of bees making noise. They seem to have calmed down that second shot of smoke. So we can see as we put the smoke on here, they'll move away. That little bit right there is what the honeycomb looks like. Bees are incredible builders. They will build honeycomb wherever they can. This suggests to me that we may be running out of room, but it looks like when I look in here, we've got some interesting things going on. So one of our first priorities is there's usually only one queen. There usually should only be one queen in this entire hive. We want to make sure that whatever we do, we don't damage the queen. So we're going to start on one of these outside frames here. We usually pull the second frame. I'm going to lever it out here as gently as I can. And you can see there are a lot of bees working on the honeycomb. This is what's called a shallow frame. You can see a bee right here that has the pollen. They are very actively using this honeycomb to store the pollen. You can see the pollen in here, these little yellow sort of dusty cakes that are in the honeycomb. That's the pollen, which is the protein source for all of the creatures that live in here. The nectar, which is what this liquid is right here, once it's been sitting in these combs long enough, it dries out and it will become honey. Sorry? Is that a drone? This is a drone. So we've got several different kinds of bees here. This is a drone. This is a male bee. Almost all of the bees in the hive are female. There's the queen and all of her daughters, the workers, in various stages of life. The drones are here to help keep the species alive. They will periodically go out and fly and mate with queens from other hives, not this one. So we've pulled the shallow box. There are several different sizes of boxes that we work with. The first box we opened was a shallow box. This is a medium depth box. And this is actually showing us, we had some indication on the top of this frame that there might be queen cells on this, but it looks like that's from sometime in the past because there aren't any queen cells on this right now. So this is what you call a very nice brood pattern. What we have here is almost an entire frame of honeycomb cells with young bees. Eggs would have been deposited by the queen in each of these cells, and then food would have been laid in here in various stages by the worker bees. And once the eggs would feed off of that food, and they will grow and develop, and we'll hopefully see several different stages of this development as we look around. Ultimately, the cells are capped as the larvae get to a certain size, and they mature sort of like the way a butterfly is in a cocoon. They mature in this capped cell before they emerge as a winged young adult bee, like what you see wandering around here. We call these capped brood cells. Most of them are this flat layer that you see here. A couple of them are raised, like this one right here at the corner of my tool. These are the drone cells. These are where the boys are being raised. You can see just how many more girls are being raised than there are boys. We've gone through a couple of frames over from where we were a minute ago, and you see we don't see capped brood here anymore. We don't see that orange cap across all the cells. We see many cells where there's nothing. There's just a dry cell. But what we also see if we look in here is we see, it may be hard to see here, but there are white larvae in the bottom of these cells in various stages of development. And so the bees that are crawling around on here are bringing food to each of these larvae in these cells to feed them and help them grow. And as they grow, they will continue to fill out the space until at some point the cell will be capped over, and they will go through that final metamorphosis into the adult bee that will come out and become a young worker, like many of the bees that you see here. So this frame shows a range of ages of larvae. We have capped brood, perhaps fairly old capped brood that for whatever reason didn't emerge, sitting here in these covers. And then you see really thick, ropey white larvae in here. But if you work your way across here, the cells are emptier and emptier to the point where it's very hard to tell, but there are very small larvae in here that have just gotten going. That indicates that the queen is still very active and has recently been laying, which is always a good sign for us. That tells us that our queen is healthy. And we can see the big larva in this area here, but as we start working our way across, we see smaller and smaller little larvae in here. You see just these little C's in the very bottoms of the cells. So these are only a matter of days old, maybe at most a week old, whereas these are several weeks old back over here. So we're going to let this frame be. You can see over here, these have just these teeny tiny little C's in the bottoms of the frames here. These are the youngest larva, having just gone from being an egg to being the youngest phase of larva. Some of the other things that we look for in a hive, I've put the top box, the shallow box that I referred to earlier, back on, and these cells here are being filled with nectar. You can see the shiny watery substance. That's a sugary water that the bees are collecting at flowering plants all over within a 3 to 4 mile radius of this hive. What they'll do is they'll fill these cells up with the nectar, which has a certain sugar content, it's a certain moisture content, and they will sit it here and they will fan their wings and dry out this area to reduce the moisture and ultimately get it down to a certain moisture level where they can cap it off and make it honey, which they can use throughout the winter. Just as we might can jelly or jam from the fruits that we grow in a garden in the summer. They put away nectar that they collect all summer long. They cap it off in this preserved cell. Like we haven't seen any of it, but it's normally here. They're in the process of making it now. This is the first frame that I pulled out. I'm going to put it back in the box here very carefully to make sure that I don't squish any bees in the process of putting it back. All right, make sure all the frames are in there. We've determined that very recently the queen has been laying eggs. We call that a queen right hive. That's a goal. We want to make sure that we have a queen right hive in every hive. If we don't, we have to do something pretty quickly. This looks like a good hive. It's got plenty of bees. I think we hope that it will get more honey before the fall. We've taken some, so we're hoping we'll leave the rest for them to build for the winter. Looks like a good hive. Because we don't want to keep bothering them, we will probably not look at this hive the next time that we're here to inspect all the other hives, as we've already gotten into it and want to give them a break.